Hype Network presents.
On this episode of Season 4, let's talk.
Do you have the enough grit to actually push through? Is this really what you wanted? Are you a cut above the rest, or do you have what it takes to actually push this through? Do you have the mental toughness? Do you have the emotional toughness to actually weather the storm, or can you actually take the hit?
Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv Show, and I'm your host Rajiv Doreswamy. And this show aims to help reach out to those who are currently struggling in life and to remind you that life is indeed beautiful when you're inspired to make it your own. Before we get into this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to whichever platform you are using. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at The Rajiv Show. Hey folks, welcome back to The Rajiv Show. Wow, 41, the previous episode, it was the 40th episode, and now I can't believe I've actually hit 41. My guest today is also a member of the PPD. He's got his own podcast, which we'll talk about in few minutes. And interesting story before we actually get this whole thing beginning. How I know this guy is also from my first impression of this guy, and he knows fairly well that
For sure.
I'm gonna mention this because knowing him is kind of the iconic person. That the iconic way of knowing him is through this idea. During one of our PPD community get together stuff, I was on my phone and then I saw this guy, and then this was the first time we met. So my first impression was, oh man, you are such a fine specimen. Everybody went laughing.
Such a big
So,
word, Raj.
yeah.
Specimen.
Yeah, because I don't
Everybody was
know.
shocked.
Yeah, the funny part about that, I was just joining in through my phone. So while I was joining in through my phone, it was I had no choice. It was so tiny, and I could. It was like swiping right on Tinder or something. So the first
Mhm.
thing on the first box basically was your face, and you had some weird background in the back, and then then yeah, I said, oh man, I'm looking at a fine specimen for the first time, pal. And then I said hello, and then I kept quiet. I was so quiet ever since. So yeah. My guest, I want to introduce my guest. That was the very longest guest. My guest, CK Christopher Klein Asinas. Did I pronounce the last word properly?
Hello. Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Awesome, awesome. Aside from the thing that I mentioned and the embarrassing story about how we met, could you give a little bit of background about yourself to my listeners?
Okay. All right. So, hello everybody. Like Rajiv has said, I am CK Asinas, and just one comment there. Actually, that background in that video call, or in that game night with the PPD community, was actually about was actually a scene from the movie or the film Scarface. Which was around 1980, so it's one of the most iconic films, and I really love that. And if you are a fan of that film, then you can also you will already know more about myself without actually speaking more at length. But of course, to introduce myself further, I am a tech startup professional, and I am also a sustainability advocate. I have been in the startup industry since I was in college. I have been engaged and immersed with the local community in the Philippines since I was in college. Given that I co-founded an entrepreneurship org in my university before, in my alma mater, and right now I am working in two tech startups. One of which is I am one of the founding. I am a member of the founding team, And of course, aside from my daily duties in those two startups, I am also an ambassador, a sustainability ambassador from this program by Make Sense, which is Youth for Sustainable Cities.
Yeah.
And actually, through this program, I met my co-hosts and friends and co-founders of the podcast Sustainarumble. And then also I am an aspiring elite athlete. So on my free time, if I'm not reading books, if I'm not listening to podcasts, or if I'm not taking online courses and everything that keeps me preoccupied, I actually go outdoors. I run the trails, I run the road, I bike, I also work out. And my goal really is to reach the, the elite level in athletics, particularly in OCR, obstacle course racing and running, before I actually eclipse this kind of phase, because I am sure that I do not have all the years in the world to be as fit as this. So I am just racking up achievements before I actually move on to my next phase. So other than that, I am so interested with a lot of things. I am a curious learner. I If you can see, if you would be able to read or see my tabs in my browser every day, there are so many articles that I read every day. There are so many media, video, any reading material that I actually consume every day to actually keep myself updated, especially on the newest trends in economics, technology, innovation, sustainability, and whatnot.
Wow. That's a lot to unpack there. Tech startup, uh, sustainable. Uh, I don't know how the sustainable thing is, but yeah, we're gonna talk about that because I mentioned that earlier. And then athlete. Wow, this is an amazing thing. But before we get into the stuff that you've unpacked that we're gonna talk about, um, let's take it back. Let's take it back a bit. If you and I were classmates in high school, who were you in high school? Are you the silent type, the athletic? Are you still the same athletic? Are you the guy with the chicks? Because yeah, you when you said athlete, that was the first signal. Yeah, this guy is an all rounder, and I got respect to this guy. So yeah, I
Wh-
digress from the question. If you and I were classmates in high school? Are you the athletic type, the shy type, the introverted person, or back of the class, or were you the front of the class, competitive in your own field in terms of, being nerdy or being the first in class and all that stuff? Who were you in high school if you and I were classmates?
Okay, so if you and I were classmates, you would see me as the competitive type, the top of the class type. Funny enough, despite being engaged in athletic activities and competitions these past years, I wasn't really the top athlete before. In a circle of athletes and jocks, I am
Yeah.
the only geek. I am the only one who's really about nerdy, who's really smart, who's really geeky in the circle of basketball and football players. I have been my circle of friends, mostly in college. I mean, in high school and in elementary, are the jocks. So every now and then, say after classes, we play basketball using our black shoes with the heels, right? So
Yeah.
my mom would actually scold me because there's not one pair that lasts a year, because I play the black shoes, the leather shoes,
Yeah.
at basketball after classes. So um and then speaking about the geeky part, so I have been also close with the geeks in the batch,
Mm.
in the batches I was in. So I read a lot. Of course, we would share books. I
Yeah.
read novels, but at the time they were reading Harry Potter. I wasn't reading that.
Yeah.
I was reading Percy Jackson and whatnot. So we would share books, and I was also an achiever type, meaning, I do not really care really so much about having high marks. I just wanna succeed. I just wanna stand out. I just wanna, be at the spotlight. Meaning I take on leadership roles. I also impress in wherever. I was also in the debate team. So I
Mm,
have competed already both in the local and national debate competitions
mm,
back in when I was in high school. And yeah, so a lot of people actually misunderstood me when I was in high school because I was this really not cheeky, but really I think extroverted leader type who really wants like near perfection. And that leads to the point wherein say if I take on leadership roles, I would really scold my classmates. I would
mm.
really report them to the teachers. Right. So
Yeah.
I got into different trouble when I was in high school because of that. Primarily I did not engage in any fist fight at all. I took it with diplomacy because I believe that if two, three, or more kids would actually be fighting, it would not be good for them to take it into a fist fight.
Mm.
Meaning, it's much better if there is some sort of a mature mediator, meaning the guidance counselors, the parents, and whatnot. So, yeah. So that was me. I was the achiever type. I was the geek in the circle of jocks and athletes, and I was kind of also the nerdy type. So yeah.
It's funny. The moment you said geek and then you played basketball, I had this image in my head. The one thing I wanted to share is that the moment you guys finish, this is what was running to. You just finished, let's say, a 15-minute game or a 20-minute game, and then suddenly all of a sudden, hey folks, do you guys want to sit down and study some physics? That was my impression. Sit down with a physics book and just dabble into some gravity defying stuff.
Actually, I never did that. Interestingly, I never did that because I know my friends, the jock friends, would not be interested in that. So how I went about it is I had different circle of friends. So I had the jock friends, I
Yeah.
had the geek friends, I had the debating friends and whatnot. So really different circles of friends. And actually that helped me get through college, given that I just mentioned that I am a curious learner, so I tend to do everything. So I just being involved and being close with people who are good and who are talented in those specific areas would actually make my life more interesting, and it actually did. It made my life interesting in high school and even until now.
You took the words right out of my mouth. My signature line. Interesting.
Okay, all right, so I'm actually willing to bet uh would Rajiv say about 20 interesting words in this recording? 25, 30, I guess. We would leave that to the audience to guess.
Well, if that's your bet, 25. I'm going 50. And I'm starting now. That's really interesting
Or-
that you could think of it that way.
wow, I underestimated your capabilities, Raj.
You underestimate my power, just like Darth Vader.
You had the high ground.
Yeah. So let's get into the stuff that you unpacked here. First of all, let's go accordingly, because you mentioned leadership, athletics, sustainable, and tech startup. Tech startup, I'm sure is, or startup in general is business. I'm sure that's one of the interesting thing, because I'm a
Yes.
transitionary person. Prior to our recording, I'm a fresh graduate of music, and I want to transition to entrepreneurship, and of course the startup phase. I think I'm still in the startup phase. I think the thing that I'm struggling there is getting started, basically. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a few more minutes. Let's talk about leadership first. Is this when you did leadership in school, and I'm sure the discipline carried throughout your, the upcoming projects that you took and all that stuff. Uh, was it a genetic thing that you've inherited?
I'd like to believe, yeah. Primarily because I know that my parents were also achievers themselves.
Hmm.
My dad used to be the silent type. My mom kind of like same, but I think where I really got this genes, this talent, is from my grandmother. She used to be a teacher back when she was still alive, when she was still working. She was also engaged in so many things, including politics, governance, and civil society. So just her being, taking those positions and really taking control of whatever she is holding and she is managing is really something to admire. And I think that is where I got it also. I also got this, I believe, from my grandparents, also from the mother side, because both of them are really detail oriented business people. So they handled businesses, multiple businesses in the province,
Hmm.
and they were also influential in a way in their communities. So I just believe that, this is something that I also got from them, and at the same time, this is also something that developed over time with exposure also. I won't say that I had the confidence early on, when I was really young. I used to be this shy 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 kid until I just tried, say, joining singing competitions when I was in elementary. Although that did not flourish because I wasn't able to, because of my multiple interests. I wasn't able to nurture that talent. And then I also joined this, what they call this, uh, balagtasan, if you can remember, in Filipino subject, where you have like, there is like four people, five people in a group, and then you would be saying poetic things in front of the stage. You would be like debating at the same time, blurting out poetic rhymes and whatnot. And I also joined dance competitions. I also had to lead those. Although I wasn't the choreographer, but I was sort of like the lead dancer when I was young. So yeah, I think I just developed the urge to join those competitions because I have so many I have so much curiosity about a lot of things.
Hmm.
And I think that just grew into, like, more practical um usage and utilization of this kind of skill, which we now call leadership. So yeah, it's really a mix or combination of both the genetics and also the exposure also.
When you mean by exposure, did you have that first-hand experience in the field before you even got into the field? So you know that the moment, because you mentioned earlier that you have that eye for detail and that kind of perfectionism when it comes to leadership. Do you have that first-hand experience as well from your parents? Where there were certain days where you tagged along with them, and then you saw them doing their thing. Did you have that by any chance?
Actually, I cannot really recall any particular moment, but uh, I know my dad is really detail oriented when it comes to management. Also, my mom when it comes to managing the house, and actually putting control in everything. I think just them, you know, um, nurturing me as I grew up, being more specific and particular with everything that I am doing. being really supportive of my choices. I think that somehow grew over time. It did not there wasn't like one magic moment where, like, it was a big news flash for me, and then I learned that, okay, this is leadership. I Although I took some roles in school, I
Mm.
think that is also where I was able to recognize that it's called leadership. It's what leadership is about. Like, people, I had these experiences, although that groups or people or teachers actually put me on the pedestal, and I think that's okay. They put me on the pedestal because they think that I am the most mature one in the group, so they entrust me with things. And I think, the mere responsibility that and also the liability to actually do the right thing and make the right choices and also be responsible for others. I think that just grew on me. And over time, yeah, I think that everything all collectively um, you know blossomed into, the leadership traits and the skills that I have right now.
Interesting, interesting. Wow. You are really a
That's
specimen.
two.
Yeah. Oh, you're counting.
That's two interesting. I'm
That's
counting.
yeah. Actually, three plus the other one that I said earlier. But yeah. Wow. I mean, wow, that's really fascinating right off the bat. Leadership. I think we need more people like you in times like this, because this is where the madness happens, and the craziness happens, and we need proper guidance with all. I'm not really getting uh, political or anything, but yeah,
Mm.
I kind of understand that the thing. Um, and it's fascinating and interesting at the same time. Um, let's transition from leadership into athletics. Athletics. How did athletics thing play a sense of discipline in your current life? I'm sure you mentioned also earlier that you would do exercise, and you mentioned also that you have this one body, and you got to take care of it. So prior to that, when did that happen? When did the fascination for athletics, is that also genetic, like the same thing as leadership?
Okay. So I'd like to believe that we are not really an athletic family.
Yeah.
Even in my even in my roots, both from my mother and my father's sides, uh, I just got fascinated first into sports. I can vividly remember when I went to the province, and then I was around 10 years old back then.
Mm.
And then my cousins were really into basketball. So they introduced me into basketball. They were watching NBA, so they were showing me NBA games, so we would watch together. Back then I did not really understand what basketball was. So I started watching, and then my first idols when I started watching NBA was Tracy McGrady and Dirk Nowitzki. So I was watching them, and then I got into I like they also taught me how to play. They also brought me along to watch a local game in the stadium. So like that grew the interest in basketball for me. And then sooner or later, as I discovered more sports, watched them on TV, like tennis, lawn tennis, American football, motorsports like Formula One and whatnot. So that actually just, you know, uh, just grew the interest to watch sports.
Yeah.
And essentially, since I was also involved, and I was also engaged in sports. So the tendency was I got into different circles of friends that are into sports, mainly the athletes, the jocks, right? So we would play, like I said, we would play basketball every day at the end of the end of the after the classes end. And then um I actually wanted to be good that much, although given that I have so many interests, I was also in the debate team, in the broadcasting team. It was difficult for me to actually play basketball more often than they do, or than they did rather. So what happened was they developed more talent than me. They had more time, so they were the varsity players, and I was the like just the player, like someone who loves playing basketball and watching
Hmm.
basketball. And then
Interesting.
it just further grew.
Hmm.
So I did not become an athlete back then. I wasn't able to successfully enter the varsity team.
Hmm.
So others were way better than me. But then right now, I had I had the chance already to fulfill that specific aspect. Particularly since I've been also fond of jogging back then, so that grew further into running. And then I also met people who like OCR, obstacle course racing. So they also introduced me to that sport, which I also fell in love right off the bat. And OCR kasi is also involved, or is also engaged with running. So there is a bit of running also with in the sport of OCR. So I thought that this is something that I can actually do. So I just need to actually condition my body better, not just running, but also develop my upper body strength and whatnot, develop my cardio. So I trained for it. I met a community that is fond of training for OCR and competing also. So we would work out together. We would train together. Then we would also be comparing milestones. We would also be motivating each other until that world really dawned on me, and I was like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can crash the podium. Back then, when I first started joining competitions, it was like so. Like I just wanted the experience and nothing else. But then as I did it a little bit more, and as more of these people from the community are aiming for medals, then I grew the interest also to achieve those kinds of things. So it is rather a gruesome process. Being an athlete might be glamorous for a lot of people, given that you say, for example, you see them on TV,
Yeah.
you see their workout videos, they're so intense, you feel you think that they're so strong and whatnot.
Yeah.
But actually what happens at the back of the curtain is pure blood and sweat, dedicated just to win. It's like you are training, for 3 months, say six times a week, 5 times a week, only to race in a competition that will only take like 30 minutes. So
Hmm.
like imagine all those times of preparation, all collectively compared to just the single event that would just take 30 minutes or 1 hour or more. So it's nothing. The training, the process is nothing compared to actually the competition. So it's really the involvement of discipline, and I think that's one of the things that I really learned. Although discipline wasn't really new to me, given that I was already taking on responsibilities when I was in school.
Yeah.
Discipline in the real world, in the bigger world,
Hmm.
is something that I further nurtured in myself through athletics. Because say, okay, I'll just take you through the process. Say, for example, I'm already running. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm already it is let's just say it's a 42-kilometer marathon, and then I am already at the 30-kilometer mark. Now, in a marathon, the first 30 kilometers you can just bear it through your sheer physical abilities. But 30 to 42 kilometers, that last 12-kilometer stretch of the competition, of the race, is actually purely mental toughness. Like everything is pain, everything feels so painful, your legs are hurting, you are gassing out, your energy is depleting. You feel like you want to stop, you just want to walk it out, but then you have to continue, you have to run. So it's really purely mental toughness, and you have to carry yourself to the finish line. It wasn't easy. Like the running, which say for example at the first 10 to 20 kilometers of that race, is say very very manageable, given that you have already trained for it for a couple of months, and you have actually prepared your body for it. But then what your body is not prepared is the latter stages, which is purely mental, not really physical, but really
Mm,
purely mental in your head. How much do you want it? How much do you want to push? How much do you want to gain to gun for a better time? It depends on you, whatever your milestone wants to what your milestone is, what you are really what you're really aiming for. Is
mm,
it do you want to set a personal record? Do you want to finish on top of the podium? Do you want to finish at a specific position or whatnot? It depends on you. But if you say, if you are gunning for a PR, a personal record, or um, for a podium position, then you really have to push it. You really have to be mindful also of your body. It's not that easy. Of course, you cannot just purely run it out. You
mm,
have to also learn how to manage your body. You have to really know your body before you go into a race. You have to know at what point you would feel dehydrated. At what point do you have to hydrate? How much? At how much energy you have to store, and all those things. It really gets technical, especially if you are gunning for something that big.
mm,
So mental toughness and grit is really something that's that athletes are learning in the process, from training to the race. And for me, in my case, mental toughness and grit are really important assets, critical assets to my journey as a professional. Not really for athletics, but really more into entrepreneurship,
mm.
because uh, there are so many challenges in life that you have to bear, you have to go through, and you
Yeah.
have to have that mental toughness, especially if you're starting a business. If you are making a leap, it's like you're also sacrificing a lot of things.
Yeah.
You are sacrificing your day job if you plan to go full time for your new business. You're also sacrificing time away from your family. You're also probably sacrificing some leisure. Some hobbies that you used to have.
Mm,
So if you used to be an athlete, then you would have to, like, if your business demands it, you would have to let go of your athletic activities, and just focus primarily on your startup or on your new business. So there are lots of cards to play. You would also invest your money there, so you would have to be able to grit it out, because passion will take you actually will actually make you start.
mm.
Passion will make you start, but grit will keep you going. Um, your sheer passion to start that business is something that would actually pull you in. So you would start it out, you would be so motivated to actually start it now. You would invest in it, you would learn more about it, you would find team members or business partners to work with you. But then once the tough gets going, that is where the grit kicks in. Do you have the enough grit to actually push through? Is this really what you wanted? Are you a cut above the rest, or do you have what it takes to actually push this through? Do you have the mental toughness? Do you have the emotional toughness to actually weather the storm, or can you actually take the hit? A lot of entrepreneurs have failed.
Mm.
That's a fact. So really, first and foremost, if you are gonna enter into entrepreneurship, you really have to have that grit and mental toughness, and that is really something, or those are really two things that are really vital in the learning process when I'm engaged in athletics.
It's interesting how you segued from saying from athletics to entrepreneurship, and we even haven't scratched the surface. It's very, very, very interesting, and I think that's number 8 already. Uh, uh, it, it, it's fascinating. I love the story, and one thing that caught my attention earlier on was the fact that if you were to think about this, the way I heard it is that if you had the possibility to kind of dedicate your athletics into the sports side of thing, you would have also there would have been an alternate universe where you would have dominated uh, in the athletic side, probably, because that's how I heard it earlier on when you said you were in high school with your classmates or your basketball with your friends. Yeah, you mentioned a lot that saying that there was a lot of stuff going on. I'm sure you're getting hits from left to right. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that it was tough to manage everything and then put everything into a plate and then consider working on that level, and then after that, you're missing out the opportunity. But then again, I think you've mentioned that you actually successfully managed to make a what's the word for it, compensate. You manage to compensate. In the end, you're still doing what you love, and
Mm.
you're still it's funny how I'm looking at the entire storyline, and I love the entire arc where you kind of regretted something in high school which you wished you would have taken, but then it evolved. You've started from basketball, and then you're doing OCR, and then you're doing other stuff, and then now you're also including entrepreneurship, which is the main point there is that you are really a truly specimen. Because that is
I think I just have I
yeah.
think I just have a lot of time. That's all.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Now I don't know what number interesting I'm talking about, but yeah, it's really fascinating. Um, Before we get into we get into a little bit of sustainability talk, and a little bit more, we dig deep into entrepreneurship. Folks, we're just gonna have a short break, and then we'll be right back after these few short messages.
Welcome to Hintang Nights Podcast, ang inyong midnight thoughts na walang pinipiling oras. Ang long-distance friend mo na mahilig mag-advise. At ang go-to hub mo kapag gusto mo lang ng maingay sa buhay. This podcast is hosted by yours truly, Jelly!
Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv Show, and again, my guest, CK Christopher Klein, and we during the ad, he was actually talking about something fascinating. I think we will unravel that as well in this conversation, so at least wasted breath won't be a thing. At least the golden moments won't die out. uh, During the break, we were talking about time management, and it was fascinating how dedicated CK is to his life and the art of living, and it's really fascinating with all the stuff that he's doing. I hope in this conversation, after this conversation, uh, I'd get some of his influence, saying. But I want to share some stuff also. I mean, yeah, I know uh, of the first half, you've kind of dominated the conversation. I want to also share some stuff that I think I've also shared in previous conversations that I've had. Is that during a span of my life, yeah, I keep sharing this a lot. The lost years, which is my years from 2005 and 2015, I've kind of inherited the habit of being a perfectionist in terms of what I do, and it's really fascinating when I learn something, especially when it comes to the creative side, like creating stuff. I have that sense of
Yeah.
the details has to be right, or else I have to go back to the drawing board again. During the earlier drawing period when I used to draw comics, that I consider that the longest relationship that I've had, because uh, that that one-on-one, those one-on-one moments that I've had with my art, and mostly it was all about me and my art. It was research. I had access when I was in India. I had access to internet, and mostly I spent my days studying other artists and trying to emulate it in such a way that, I get so disappointed. I set my expectations so high, but in the end I get so disappointed. And then it's kind of morally degrading. It's like, uh certain days I want to break up with the art, but then 5 minutes later, I'm sorry,
Mm.
darling, I love you, and then get back together. It's not really a toxic Filipino style thing, but it's more like uh, a relationship. It's like a normal relationship. You there are always going to be those arguments and all that stuff. That's why even lately, it kind of it's spilled over in my marketing, and in anything I do with the creative, social media. Now that I'm lately obsessed with social media because of how it operates, how to think like a social media guy. You gotta know what you're saying. You gotta know thing. And then of course I have a weakness for grammar, which is, I think I haven't shared that portion. I have a weakness for grammar in such a way that what I have in my head, it's funny enough, it happens a lot. It's subconsciously, it happens a lot. uh when I type something or I write something, I say it out loud, but even when I say it out loud, or I think I keep it in my head and then I type it out, I have this habit of not back reading the entire sentence or the entire word.
Mm.
And then when I get that, like, let's say, let's talk about Facebook posts. I use Canva a lot. And then when I get my message out there, it's funny, I get comments or messages. You're missing out a comma here, you're missing out a period mark. And I get so
Yeah.
frustrated. There's a certain moments, like I have the itchy trigger finger for pulling the post back and then taking it back and then resharing it in such a way that I get to organize my thought again, because sometimes, most of the time, it actually happens a lot. And yeah, I've developed the same thing that during the break you said that you don't have the you don't want to waste time. I think you mentioned that perfectly. The funny thing about me is that that's also the same thing for me. I have ADHD when it comes to thing. And as we speak and stuff, I'm looking for ways to make sure that my hands and everything around me is working, like I'm still doing something along with thing. And not just that, in I think I've also mentioned this, while I'm talking to you, I'm actually listening to music that kind of gets me into the groove, which is also one thing that um, motivates me. I'm sure none of you guys are hearing the
Mm.
music that I hear. It's because it's directed to my monitor. And the main reason for that is it's a habit that I've developed over the span of all the podcast episodes that I've done, from here and the PPD show. It's that I have the need to have some sort of music to get me into the groove. I know it sounds weird, and yeah, I am a weird character coming from an artist perspective. It's very weird, but yeah, it kind of works for me. But yeah, those are the things. I have an ADHD is stuff, and I do a lot of stuff, and granted that I think I've uh, reached 41st episode of this Let's Talk series. It's it kind of sets my entire year. So for the next coming years prior to this, all I have to do is just edit and work things out and then get things together. But yeah, aside from that, it's interesting in itself. Interesting. And I don't know if you have a meter there, an interesting meter there. I think I've already
I
reached
think
11.
you're at about 15 already. I think you're at about 15 already.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway,
Yeah.
so you mentioned about ADHD. I'm actually just interested about it because
Mm.
I know for a fact that people with ADHD really have a hard time focusing.
Yeah.
So if you're really someone who aims for something, like how do you manage that that scenario, that dynamic wherein okay, you have this tendency that you cannot focus, but then you have to focus.
It's funny. That's a good question. But the funny part about that is I don't think I have the remedy for it. Is that once my
Mm.
attention is deviated, um, I don't know how to remedy that conversation. It's just that there are certain times that I have to back say what I'm saying. It's like if in Messenger we have the back read system, I have to back say what I'm saying. If in case even that portion, I don't even know what I'm back saying. I say forget about it. Moving on, you
Yeah.
know. And uh, how I managed to survive that thing is if the conversation, the earlier conversation, regardless of what where we're heading towards, is it has that sense of productibility. I have the system in terms of conversations, and I think I learned this from one of Jay Shetty's thing, where there's this filter
Mm.
method. I'm sure you've heard about this, where Socrates, a friend of Socrates, approaches him and then tells him something about a gossip to him, and then Socrates respond in such a way that he filters out the entire conversation. One is if it's useful, would it benefit him, would it give him value, and then the third one I forgot, but it's somewhere in it's somewhere in Jay Shetty's one of those thing old episodes, and in the end result is the person was gonna tell him a gossip about his wife cheating on him, and then of course the ending of that was there's a quotation where Socrates but the main point there is there's that filter method that that I kind of inherited in such a way that if the conversation that we're having if it gives me value, it's worth a conversation. But if it's not, I'm not taking the risk of spending an hour having that conversation with you. I rather, put my mind into something, and that's the same thing. That's a
Mm.
habit that I've also spilt over in college because I think I mentioned this also before with my teacher. I had a conversation with him earlier on, where I never get along with my folks in college because this is funny. Uh, Most of the conversations that they have is all about it, stuff like gossip. I don't like this
Mm.
guy because he was my ex for 5 years and all that stuff. And thinking about that stuff,
Yeah.
internalizing that, I often ask myself one question is that if I invest my time in that, will I do an examination? Am I gonna do am I gonna do a board examination with regarding to the data that I've received? So I kind of avoid that more, and I spend my time looking for people,
That makes
reasonable
sense. Yeah.
people who have something worth sharing, something worth experience. Experience is one thing. In a way, at least it's giving you value. I mean, relationship advices, that's good, but as long as there's a main point to it, if not, mostly it's like that, or either, Aling Maria from the other neighborhood said this, that's a regular Quezon
Yeah.
City gossip, chikahan kind of stuff. Those things never really work for me. So I walk away from most of the people that talk about that. And then I just want to invest my time in providing value. If it's small, if it's even a sentence that can be expounded upon, that makes my day basically. And making people smile along the way is also one of the greatest benefits of having a conversation like that. So yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah. I
And
think that really
yeah,
makes a lot of sense, especially if you, especially those people, if you are really around them, they would just deplete your energy.
yeah.
Like there is nothing really worth talking about there. Well,
Mm,
I would not hold it against them, given that there are lots of things at play right
Yeah.
here in that scenario, because what people say and what people think are based on the context of their daily lives.
Yeah.
Given that, say, if those people are speak like that, it's probably because that is how they were brought up by their parents, or that is what they normally see in their local communities,
Yeah.
and that actually shaped their reality, right? But then, really, for you, if you really know it's really not something that's gonna be beneficial for you, the best way is really to step away, like spend more time with people who make or who talk a lot of sense.
Mm.
Spend time with people who would actually help you nurture your mindset and your knowledge better, and
Yeah.
also spend time with people that would actually make you feel better as a person in general, meaning, they see your value, they think you're amazing, they support you in your endeavors and whatnot. So yeah, I think what you did there is really just, a default option for people who think that those kinds of conversations are not really helpful for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way. I don't think that you would really belong in those groups.
Yeah.
So I would guess that it's okay that you did not fit in. What's wrong with not fitting in if those people, if the meaning of fitting in is actually being around people who are like that, right? Or
Yeah.
who think like that. So better not fit in, be stand out among the crowd,
Yeah.
be yourself, do what you love to do, and explore more of your curiosities. And essentially the lives of the game changers in the world. They did
Yeah.
not fit in because they were just cut above the rest. They were not normal, right?
Yeah. To add on to what you said about the idea of fitting in, is that there's this genetic thing that you inherit as well when you're a part of a community, because um it,
Mm.
I don't know if you agree with me though, in this context, because let's say I have a let's say I have a constant communication with you. At some point in period, I'm sure deep down inside, let's say after this conversation, or if I listen to this conversation, or I dabble into building that relationship with you as a friend, I kind of rub off some certain habits of yours that subconsciously I never thought about it. But then when someone points it out, dude, you have this thing that you wake up early, or which is actually an imaginary thought. I rarely wake up early. Uh, uh, but yeah, that the main habits, like the need to do something creative, the need to produce something, and those tiny things that you do, that you mentioned, that throughout that building of that relationship, probably I've taken up subconsciously. That is one thing, especially in a community wise, where you have 5 to 10 people talking to you left and right, and then you're gathering all this data, and somehow you've inherited a little bit from Jack, you've inherited a little bit from John, you've inherited a little bit from Jenny, you've inherited everything, and then that's you.
Mm.
It really plays an impactful role. So I guess for those
Yeah.
who are listening, you one thing I gotta say is that if you're looking for a group, a community to join in, don't uh, this is just an opinionated from my end. This is just an opinionated thing, is that if you really want to join in a community, it's best to first know yourself in such a way that you could build your own interest and make yourself interesting enough for you to be influential to
Mm.
someone, rather than you getting influenced by someone, and then in the end, regretting it, and then it goes to that circle of depression, anxiety, and all those whatnots that
Yes.
people want to avoid. So yeah, find your crew by finding
I
you. That's, I think, the simplest form.
mm, yeah, I totally agree with that, Raj. No. So it's really important that you really know yourself
Mm.
and you discover more of what you really want in life. Of course, if you're still a kid, or if you're at in elementary or in high school, this would not make sense. You would find it hard to understand this because, of course, you do not know much about the world. But then, if you can actually decide, if you can learn, think for yourself, and you can decide whatever you want to do and choose who your friends are, choose those who you can also inspire and influence. At the same time, choose those who you would rather spend most time with, because these people, in one way or another, without you knowing it, can also still influence you on certain levels. And so, if you want to be influenced in a positive way, go
Mm.
with people who can actually do that for you.
Yeah.
Because these people will actually help you shape your realities. There
Yeah.
are lots of things that you have not discovered or have not learned yet that you would learn from these people, and it's
Mm.
actually you choosing what you want to learn by judging them on, say, their temperament on things, their character and whatnot. Because tendency is people who have better disposition at life, who have a good mindset and are more are healthy also in emotion, they tend to be more responsible people, tend to be more tactful with whatever they say or whatever they do.
Mm.
They tend to be more diligent. They also tend to be more intelligent. So
Yeah.
really stick with people who complement you and who you complement also. So it's really, you influence them in a positive way, and they can also influence you in a positive way, making you a really better person
Yeah.
overall.
Uh, and yeah, one more thing is I want to add in this it's not really a spiritual, psychological, philosophical um add on into this conversation, because this conversation kind of opened up a wormhole, which is something that I really want to express. And the thing that I learned in building relationships, it's that over the span of I'm speaking from experience, granted, in this pandemic, of course, when I joined the PPD community, and I've met also people outside of the PPD community, the guests that I've had over the past 41 episodes. Uh, one thing that I've learned is that the, the the philosophical or the metaphysical thing that I've learned is, when you really want to learn someone, it goes beyond looks. It goes beyond intellect. This is gonna be a little bit turned for from the left side of the field. How I've What I mean by what I said is that when you meeting someone for the first time, for me personally, when I'm meeting someone for the first time, it's more than just the conversation that connects. For me, of course, there's that sort of judgmental thing going on in the back of my head. Granted that if the person can speak
Mm-mm.
properly or express, granted that if they can't even speak properly, but they have ideas that they can express, they can communicate. It's it's really fascinating. But the one thing, aside from that generic stuff, from the judgment and all the stuff, one thing that I've learned is it's kind of more like a pseudo spiritual thing, is that finding out what the person's vibe is, that and I know the conversation is weird for me when I've met everybody, and when I've met everybody from the PPD and outside the PPD. It's more about how I felt with the vibe. It's all about the vibe. In the
Mm.
sense that uh, it's like a soul seeking certain a soul seeking certain habitat for it to live, for it to grow, for it to survive. And
Yeah.
throughout the conversations that I've had, I felt like each episode that I've done is my soul has found a sort of home into the conversations. Like I've That's the reason why I get into getting into the high school, traveling into the high school, getting to know and painting a picture of who the people are. It's really fascinating that I want to see. I want to compare vibes in order to see that, and throughout the span of the conversation, if we're vibing, you'd feel it. It's not really something that you could really express in word or in action or even in a blog. It's more about, you could tell that it works for you, and that's the thing about it. So yeah, this really interesting thing that I wanted to share, which yeah. And in this conversation, I would love to say that I kind of vibed with my guest, because one thing is, we talk a lot, and sometimes there are certain times where we hit the record button, and when we are on ad breaks, we still carry on the conversation, regardless of ad breaks or not. But yeah, that's the one thing that I love to share: the spiritual, metaphysical, philosophical side of building relationships is finding your vibe and finding your your uh, your your home for conversations and intellectual uh, stretch and knowledge. So yeah, that's my experience in that entire thing. We're just gonna have a quick one. We're just gonna have a quick conversation about startups and thing, because I think in the first half, CK already opened a little bit of insights. I wanted to ask though. I don't think this might be a nonsensical question, but I'm still asking it regardless. Is that when you did your startup, were there certain things that you said that were culture shock to you, that created a sort of culture shock to you, in the sense that when you uh, when you started out, of course, the idea of startups is tough, because one is you're starting with no resource, no knowledge, and you're new to the field, and I'm sure you agree with me on that. Is that but were there certain culture shock thing that when you started out and said, "Oh, I did not know uh, that could happen. You could do that. You could do this. You could take this. You could take that." Were there certain moments like that with you?
Okay. So when we talk about culture shock, generally I did not have any, because um, since I was in college, I have already been engaged with the local community, meaning I have also taken a student ambassador role for a startup company to actually build the community in the Philippines. And so being engaged, being in close contact with the CEOs, the founders, and whatnot, I was able to get into their minds. I was able to understand whatever they're going through. So like I had this, already had this idea of what it is like running a startup from the very outset. But of course, that does not mean that it's totally predictable already. Running a startup is really unpredictable, given that, okay, by definition, startup is an innovative business, an innovative new business that implements or uses a business model that is scalable but not yet proven. Given that that means that the business model itself is something really new, it's innovative, and it's not yet something that is already been replicated by a lot of businesses that have already flew off the ground and succeeded. So let's just go into the definition here a bit. So what are the repeatable business models? Particularly, those are the traditional businesses like restaurants, retail, warehousing, logistics, and whatnot. Although these sectors can still be disrupted with new innovative business models, and we can call that a startup. So, by definition, not all new businesses are startups, but all startups are new businesses. So, as you go along the journey of running your startup, you would still be encountering different difficulties that may not be very different at all, given that if you are really engaged and you have a lot of friends in the community, then you can share experiences. They might not be very new at all to you, but they might be something that would actually rattle your cage. Like you would have to make some adjustments that you might not be comfortable doing, but you have to. There might be different, that could actually derail you from your progress. So you really have to embrace the suck. Essentially, you have to embrace whatever is nagging, whatever is painful, because you have to do it. Um, there wasn't really a culture shock for me. But of course, there were surprises for sure. There were lots of things that I did not know that are there, because we all know that the world is ever evolving, and so nothing is really final. Lots of things happen, and given the fact that you are running a business with a new and non-repeatable business model, but can actually scale so much, um, there are lots of surprises, and at the same time there are lots of opportunities and potential growth to take place. And so yeah, but given that, these surprises can actually be difficult also. um you would have to make choices that you did not ought to, and I think you would really have to prepare for it if you're really convinced that you want to do this. And I would just like to point that, of course, when you start a business, you have to know whatever you're going to go through, you have to have the resources. You have to have the money, first and foremost, to invest in the business. You have to develop the business acumen, meaning you have to have that knowledge and skill set to manage a team, to run your finances, to manage your growth, also to meet people expectations, to sell and whatnot. So you have to have those things before you make a jump, because if you make a jump without having the adequate resources, if you fall, then it's game over for you. That is why really entrepreneurship is not for everyone. So despite having the business acumen, not a lot of people really succeed, because first and foremost, again, the business model itself is not repeatable. There's no particular blueprint for you to have higher chances to succeed. There's actually really low success rate, and so you really have to be able to embrace that. One thing that I really noticed in myself and also in other startup founders is that despite having such high risks, the reason why people, startup founders, are starting their own startups is because they believe in something that they want to be solved. They believe that it's a pain that they can eradicate themselves, because they believe that this pain is also something that the people will actually share, and they would also be open to paying for the solutions to those kinds of pains. So that's why a lot of people are actually venturing into this. Of course, there are so many what they call this. There are so many misconceptions when it comes to starting a startup, especially for people in college, those that are still in college, because entrepreneurship is very glamorized in media. You would see the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musks of the world. Then the media would portray them as, ecstatic or eccentric billionaires that have figured out a really cool technology to solve this particular problem and, conquer the world. Or like the media portrays the startup founders as some sort of like the most brilliant of people, the richest and whatnot. So like the industry is really cool in itself, that you can actually make cool products. But that's really on the outset. At the back of the curtain, I think it's the bloodiest career ever. It's on another level, because there, like I said, there is no particular blueprint. You might have guides, you might have inspiration from other people, especially your friends if they're in the startup industry. But of course, you have to prepare yourself in getting surprised with a lot of things. Entrepreneurship is not what the media portrays it to be. It's a lot more gruesome, should I say. I would just like to say this, but you know, a lot of startup founders have committed suicide, particularly because if you are entering entrepreneurship, you have to deal with a lot of anxiety. Every waking day could be every anxious waking day.
Hmm.
You do not know if you still have another runway. You do not know if this would sell. You're not sure if your business model is actually something that would generate revenue. You do not know if your product is something that people would actually love. If you try any marketing ploy to get more people to notice your product and say, for example, install if it's a software or download if it's an app, you do not know if your marketing campaign would actually work. You have to deal with a lot of anxiety, and as sad as it is, a lot of people have already committed suicide for it because their luck has run out. They have dealt with anxious days for years on end, or maybe not even a year, every waking day of their lives. They were left with nothing. It was a really dark place. They committed suicide. It was the easy way out. And so, you have to be really in a good mental state for you to before you enter this particular industry. And of course, you have to have the resources. So in case that you fail, you would have the money to start back up. Say, look for a job, or you have to have the money, of course, to invest in your business, because if you're gonna go full time, then you have no other revenue generation, unless if you have other passive income. um, then you also have to also pay your team. If you're the CEO, you have to pay your team for their time and effort. And then you have to have the enough skill set for you to actually weather the storm. And of course, like I said, grit really is the like your magic potion that will actually keep you running. And of course, grit would not work if you're still on the wrong direction. So it's not a one size fits all approach. um you just have to really be able to arm yourself beforehand before you actually enter the scene.
Wow. Interesting stuff. I mean, powerful, powerful. Uh, that I didn't expect. From a short question, I didn't expect that right off the bat. But yeah, it's interesting. I hope my listeners are inspired and fired up. And in a sense, the way I see it, I'm not saying this saying as a thing, because I love the idea of building something. I mean, there's um there's this funny quote that I think has been shared in PPD, that uh, that people quote me on, aside from, of course, the word interesting, is that I often
Interesting.
say, yeah, I often say, let's make things happen. And I do not know if I've said
Mm,
this a lot also, is that in my goal and my motivation, I think some couple of collaborations, someone asked me, um, what is your legacy? There's this thing that I often enjoy, which is enjoy saying, but I also do mean it authentically from my heart, is that I yearn to build a bridge to connect to the world. And I think that's also in relevance to entrepreneurship, is that if you can build an A to B relationship between a person who has his own island, and then he wants to connect with someone, and then you happen to build that bridge, that in itself, it's not, it's more than recognition, it's more than respect, it's something more than that. It's uplifting, and in its way, and it feels like an accomplishment in its way, that it doesn't really feed egos or anything like that. But that's one thing that I often say, is that I want to build bridges to connect to someone. I don't care who it is, how far it is, as long as I've connected someone, I'm good for it. Which is kind of the
mm,
thing. Although, yeah, the traumatizing factual thing that I do agree with what CK said, is that uh, if you guys want to get into entrepreneurship, don't buy into the marketing stuff that people are saying. The
yeah.
the the poisonous snake oil stuff that they sell. you know, it doesn't work unless if that is your intention. You wanna do it as your intention, and then you believe that you can make it, and then you successfully pull it off. Then more power to you guys if that's your thing. But if not, don't even think about it in that thing. Think about it in a way that it's integrated in your life, as though you are living to living in order to die tomorrow. You know that I think Steve Jobs said that properly. I'm just paraphrasing what he said, but yeah, that's
Okay. Yes. Let me just add a quick note right here. So, entrepreneurship is not really for everyone, but it doesn't mean that entrepreneurship is the only way you can make a change. Um, you know, like the media portrays the entrepreneurs as the game changers, but they're not the only ones. If you want to make a change, you have to decide whether it's entrepreneurship or not. Because entrepreneurship is only one way to make a change. You can still create change or radiate change or affect change through other means.
mm,
There's no bad thing about it. Entrepreneurship is not the end all be all. So you really have to know, you have to really figure out if it's entrepreneurship you want to do. So how do you make a change? You can still make a change by say, being an impactful member of the company you are working with, or being involved with so many civil society activities, or being involved in volunteering activities. There are lots of things. There are lots of ways to make a change. Entrepreneurship is not the only one. So if you want to make a change, you have to make sure if you really want entrepreneurship or not. And if not, it's okay, because there are other ways.
awesome. I thought for a second there, I thought you were gonna transition into sustainability, because
I know.
that in a sense is, yeah. I thought you were gonna build into that, but since you missed out the opportunity, I might as well make the interesting transition, because uh, to reinstate what he said, to reinstate and to add on to what he said, if you also want to make a change and you're looking at other possibilities where your back's against the wall in terms of finance, there's also another possibility, and that is sustainable thinking. Instead of,
Development.
yes, exactly. Sorry, I kind of buffered there, but yeah, that those are also possibilities where you can also add in your heart, because that's one, I think that's one of your passions in your podcast, sustainable. And I think that was the first time I approached you. I wanted to know, actually at first I wanted to know what exactly is the thing, but at that time I was so busy, I could not get time. But I will spend time and learn more about this. But I kind of moved on. I kind of deviated from the questions. um when did you get into that, to sustainable thinking? It's a rare. I'm sure it's a rare question, or it's an idiotic question. But how did you get into it? I'm curious.
Okay. All right. So, um, sustainable development or sustainability is not really my forte, given that I'm in the entrepreneurship scene.
Yeah.
Although, recently, sustainable development is something that companies, new and old, are already taking a look into. So, the reason why or how I got into this space is, my curiosity is really, everywhere. And part of building an innovative company and bridging innovation is also being responsible. We all know for a fact that the rapid economic growth has also led to rapid destruction. Factories here and there. We all know that too much what they call this, emission of carbon gases, which led to pollution, which led to typhoons and whatnot, and global warming. So climate change also. So all these things, I believe that sustainable development is something that is really closely involved with building innovative technologies, because we it's not anymore the time wherein we will just create robots or create any high capacity mechanical things or whatnot, or devices, but also those things, those products that either are helping or are in green technology rather, or are responsible enough not to say emit carbon emission and whatnot. So I believe that that is where I actually just slowly and gradually pulled into sustainable development. I know it. I know sustainability because it involves taking care of the current resources without jeopardizing the needs in the future. Um, but really, what how I got into it more deeply is through an engagement that I had with Make Sense. So they have this program which is called Youth for Sustainable Cities, and uh, there were four cities involved there: Manila, Cebu, Dumaguete. I forgot the other one. Um, so there are ambassadors for each particular domain, and I was one of the ambassadors in Manila. So I luckily got accepted, but I didn't really know what to expect, what to do. But I know that for a fact that sustainable development and sustainability is really important, because we have seen the adverse effects of climate change, pollution, lack of proper education, poverty, hunger, and whatnot to the world and to the people and the animals as well. So I entered the program, and lo and behold, I met really amazing people with so diverse backgrounds. So despite being into sustainable development, those people are really into lots of things. Different. We're really different from each other. There were those that were running their own civil society groups. There were those who are corporate professionals. There are those that are into technology like me. And there are those who are into really sustainability. They are sustainability practitioners. So meaning they are um, their work, their day jobs are really inclined to sustainability or really related to sustainability. And so I got deep into this just by being around those people. So I learned more. I read more. I was engaged with more conversations, with more discussions, and I actually grew the interest in sustainable development, because known for a fact that me in the tech startup sector, all we want is really rapid change, rapid growth, and whatnot, exponential growth as we call it.
Yeah.
However, one thing that we are tending to forget is the world is not moving as fast as us. We are depleting so much of its resources than we ought to, because of our mindset of rapid and exponential economic growth. So I believe that you cannot be a company in the future or in this decade if you are not a company that's into sustainability, or at least a company that prioritizes sustainability. Um, Sustainability right now and sustainable development is something that is already being prioritized by a lot of enterprises, given that we have to be responsible, and a lot of policies already, both global and local, are being developed and conceptualized already to really ensure that all enterprises are responsible. And I believe that it's time to care. Like in one way or another, you would really encounter these things, because as individuals, despite not being the main reasons you know why individuals, as the users, the customers, despite not being the main reason why we ought to use, say, plastics, or why we ought to drive cars that emit carbon and whatnot, we are still responsible for our daily choices. And we can live sustainable lives if we start being more conscious about what we are doing. And I believe that is already leaning towards sustainability. That is already leaning towards contributing to sustainable development.
Interesting. Uh, I don't know what number interesting that is, but I really, yeah, I'd love to actually open that
That's
book.
number 25.
uh, uh, yeah, there's more interesting coming up from the next collaboration. I would love to open into that topic, but since I promised you that we take this, we take this time off to get to know each other. That's usually what the Let's Talk series is all about. I hope we could get to open this in upcoming episodes, so certain topics in the sustainable world, and hopefully also the tech startup and athletics, because I mean there's so many things that we could basically talk about and probably make an entire episode. We could talk 24 hours, and then with that 24 hours, that's good material
Yeah,
for for an
for
entire
sure.
season, and then just schedule post that entire thing. But let's take that amazing conversation into heart, and uh, deep dive into it, because it's a good stuff. It's some good stuff, and let's open it. Hopefully, let's open that Pandora's box and the hopeful next upcoming thing. And I hope I get to book you again for the next collaboration, and I'd love to get to know you. Probably once this pandemic is done, prior to this recording, you and I would grab a beer or coffee, whatever. Since you're an athlete, yeah, I know
For sure.
beer is off the table. And to wrap up
I still
this.
drink beers though.
Okay. Oh, then we're good. Then we're good. We're good for it. To wrap up this conversation, of course, this phenomenal conversation. How do people, if my listeners would love to connect with you via social media, how do they find you on social media?
Okay. So you can find me on Facebook. My name is Christopher Klein Asinas. Klein is spelled as Calvin Klein. You can also find me on Instagram. That's ck.asinas. And same with LinkedIn. So if you want to be professionally connected, uh, my name on Facebook is the same as my name on LinkedIn. And of course, if you want to listen to our show, which explores critical issues on sustainable development, just look up Sustainarumble. That's Sustainarumble, so like sustainable, but with the rum in the middle and with the exclamation point at the end. And it's available on both on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So yeah.
Awesome. Again, from the beginning of this conversation, I'm still gonna take the introduction. I've had a conversation with this, and I'm also gonna put this in the bio, by the way. I've had an amazing conversation with the wonderful, legendary specimen of the PPD.
Specimen.
That is your nickname from me, because at first I thought I made a mistake in your name. So the word Klein, I thought it was Klein. Yeah, but yeah, I deviated. I want to say thank you to my guest, and thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. You are really a phenomenal conversationalist, I must say, and you got some amazing
Thank you,
stuff
thank you,
to
Rajiv.
share.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you invited me for this.
Hopefully, I get to invite you again. That's the main thing, you know.
For sure.
Probably
Yeah,
if
for
I get
sure.
your phone number, up front, it's gonna be the specimen. It's gonna be there. So yeah, thank you again for this opportunity to be a part of the Rajiv show, and I've said that a lot. And for those who are tuning in, I'm sure you've learned a thing or two about entrepreneurship. You got an insight about athletics, the life of athletics, and the art of being an athlete, and of course learned a lot about CK, Christopher Klein. And for those who are tuning in, I hope you learned a thing or two in this conversation. And as always, uh, cheers, folks. I will see you in the next episode.